In a small town in Vermont, there lived a quiet man named Ronald Read. He wasn't the kind of person anyone paid much attention to. He wore the same old jacket every day, his shoes were scuffed, and his car looked like it could break down any minute. He didn't live in a mansion. He lived in a modest house he'd bought decades ago, a simple wooden home surrounded by maple trees. Every morning, he would drive his rusty old Toyota to the gas station where he worked, and later in life, to the department store where he cleaned floors. The locals knew him as the janitor who never complained, always polite, always on time, always humble. But behind that calm smile was a man with a secret. Ronald Read was doing something quietly extraordinary. Every payday, when most people went out to eat or bought something nice for themselves, Ronald would walk to his local bank, cash his small check, and put aside a tiny portion not to save, but to invest. He didn't have a finance degree. He didn't even go to college. What he had was discipline, patience, and a deep belief in long-term growth. He started buying shares of companies people saw every day, but never thought about companies like Procter & Gamble, AT&T, JP Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, and General Electric. He never chased the hype. He didn't follow trends. He chose businesses that made sense to him, companies that sold toothpaste, soap, and electricity, things people would always need. He read newspapers and financial magazines at the local library, sometimes sitting there for hours after his shift. He studied how businesses worked, what made them profitable, and how dividends grew over time. And he had one rule: never sell. He let the power of compounding do its quiet magic. Every dividend check he received, he reinvested. Every dollar grew into two, every two into four, and he just kept repeating the same boring, simple, powerful habit for decades. His coworkers laughed at him sometimes. They said, "Ronald, you've worked your whole life. Why not enjoy it a little?" But Ronald would just smile and say, "Enjoying it in my own way." Years turned into decades. Ronald retired from his janitor job. People forgot about him. He'd sit quietly at the local diner, sipping his coffee, reading the newspaper, never bragging, never showing off. Then one morning in 2014, the world finally learned who Ronald Read really was. Ronald passed away peacefully at 92. The town's newspaper ran a small obituary, but a few days later, headlines started to appear everywhere. The humble janitor who drove an old Toyota had died, leaving behind over $8 million. No one could believe it. His friends were stunned. His co-workers thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Ronald Read had become one of the wealthiest men in his town without ever earning more than $12 an hour.
He had quietly built a financial empire through patience, consistency, and an unshakable belief in compounding. Even more astonishing, he didn't keep it all for himself. He left $4.8 million to the local hospital and $1.2 million to his public library, the same library where he had spent countless hours learning about finance and business. The janitor who once swept the floors of others' dreams had built his own legacy from the ground up. Ronald's story became a lesson for the entire world. It wasn't about how much you earned, but what you did with what you earned. He didn't chase trends. He didn't need luck. He didn't wait for the perfect time. He simply started, stayed consistent, and let time work its quiet magic. His story reminds us that wealth isn't built in a day, it's built daily. And sometimes, the most powerful investor in the world isn't on Wall Street. He's the one sweeping the floor wearing a worn-out jacket, quietly letting his money grow while no one's watching. Because true wealth doesn't shout, it whispers. And Ronald Read's whisper changed lives forever.